Before we begin this Sunday address, I want for everyone to make certain that if you are not already subscribed, do so now, and if you are subscribed, check to make sure that YouTube hasn't unsubscribed you. It seems that on a near daily basis, I get at least a dozen people or more telling me that they were mysteriously unsubscribed and didn't know why. Also, be sure to hit the bell icon. That's supposed to be how you get notified, though there is a question mark on that. And also, make certain to hit the like button. As you see in the comments section, the white supremacists hate that. Now, that said, Dr. John Henry Clark said that Africa's enemies came from Asia long before they started coming from Europe. The hostile actors, the invaders, the ones who started bringing in all sorts of contrarian ideas to undermine the African, that didn't start in Europe. It would eventually come from there, but it started in Asia. And of course, as we've seen, it has reached its sharpest expression with the European. Flip sides of the same coin in too many ways. But we are going beyond white supremacy at this point. What we are seeing is that there is a global system of anti-black racism. The white supremacist may be the one running the show, but the Asiatic is obviously vying to, at the very least, if not be running the show, at least to be a very high second banana. This is the world order that we're in today, and that we have to get serious about. But of course, before you can launch a racial offensive against black people, you have to put a series of pretexts in place first, because you can't really justify going after the people who are the poorest, most powerless, least resource-dense people on the planet. The people who have the least resources have the most poverty. You can't really justify them as public enemy number one, mainly because they're not threatening anyone. They don't have the power to do so. They don't have the organization to do so. In many cases, they don't have the numbers to do so. And yet, you got to be able to use them as a scapegoat. You got to be able to attack them and point out these are the bad guys. Because that is how the European and the Asiatic have traditionally focused the will of their people. These guys, if you look at the history of Europe and Asia, what you see is a never-ending string of wars. I did an entire video essay about it, racist Asians hating blacks, going all the way back over 2,000 years in China alone, just in China. A non-stop series of wars all the way up until the present. And the European, no different. European scholars like to say the history of man is a history of war. No, that's the history of Europe and Asia. Those are a history of wars, because that's the main activity that they've been carrying out. Africa was and is different, until all of this dysfunction and chaos was sown into the African by these outside forces. And with this coronavirus, we see them operating out of the same playbook. Now, there are a lot of people who were counting on the coronavirus because white supremacy was saying this is the single most important thing going on, because white supremacy wanted it to be front of mind for so many people so that it could carry out its real objectives under the cover of chaos. They figured that black folks were going to be distracted as well, and that's true. There's always going to be this rump contingent, sad to say, a majority of black people, a numerical majority, who are going to be easily distracted and easily diverted. But that ain't us. We have stayed on code. We've stayed on path. The goal of tangibles, that's 24/7. And it doesn't matter if it's a pandemic or an alien invasion. We're going to stay on our square. And that's the reason why we're not impressed or fooled by Alexadria Ocasio-Cortez, who is clearly trying to get herself some black support. Now, family, this is the same old classic manipulation tactic that we've always been subjected to by the white supremacists and a number of their non-white hangers-on and fellow travelers. What Alexadria Cortez is trying to do is to get as much material resources as she can for Hispanics before Nancy Pelosi decides to give her the Bernie Sanders treatment and show her the door. Same way that the feminists did with black women. You fool some gullible, codependent Negroes into backing your agenda, fool some simple-minded, weak-willed black folks into bolstering the numbers for this or that non-black constituency, and making it look like this group's movement has more support than it actually has. And in the end, they get what they want, and the black people who are silly enough to pal around with them, they get absolutely nothing, as always. And this is what Alexadria Cortez is trying to do. She's trying to bring home as much bacon for the Hispanic community as possible and trying to see because she finds some black folks who are dumb enough to go along with it. This is a woman who has done absolutely nothing for black people. When she won office, neither during her campaign nor her election night did she say a dang word, not one word did she spare for black people. And yet all of a sudden, now in just the span of 1 week, she's made not one but 2 high-profile appearances next to black people. This after years of ignoring black people. See, instead of the con being carried out by some white liberal trying to sucker us, now it's a Hispanic one trying to see if the same ploy is going to work. Same game, just a different face selling the lie. I guess that Alexandria Cortez figures that black people have been falling for this trick all this time. Why stop now? No matter what the Justice Democrats, and there's a contradiction in terms, no matter what the so-called Justice Democrats try to say, Alexandria Cortez realizes that she doesn't have support from the party chieftains. So much for being the leader of some squad. She's just got herself a small handful of self-interested harpies who are largely outliers. They're not going to be the next generation of Democrat Party leaders. Instead, what they're going to be is 4 maligned outsiders on the fringe, and until basically you've got them being typified as being either anti-Semitic in the case of Ilhan Omar and that Arab woman, or in the case of Ayanna Pressley, you've got them being portrayed as some sort of just kook weirdo who has no real constituency. Well, I agree with the kook weirdo part. Unfortunately, there's always a ready audience of Negroes who don't know better, so she does have a constituency, such as it is. And then you got Alexandria Cortez, just this weirdo. That's supposed to be, that's how they typified them, as just being some sort of fringe group representing the least responsible elements of the left. And you got the white media signal boosting that narrative. And with the fall of Bernie Sanders for the second time in a row, what we see is his fall was mostly carried out by black people. It was black folks who made it clear that just like with Mike the Bigot Bloomberg, BS was also going to be denied black support. He was going to understand that he was done. So when BS was asking, reparations, I don't know what that is. What reparation? I don't know what that is. Reparations is the reason you won't be president, Bernie. That's what reparations is. So don't bother fretting over it too much, 'cause ain't nothing you can do about it. But the current chaos promulgated by the coronavirus happens to be having a lot of people now sent in directions trying to see if they can jockey for position, if there's some way that they can use the current crisis for their own personal benefit. And here comes Alexandria Cortez. She figures if we're talking about the coronavirus, then nobody's going to bring up, hey, isn't this bucktooth heifer the same woman who's been ignoring black people for the longest time? Didn't she get on Meet the Press and say, oh, I've got African ancestry. That doesn't make me black. Isn't this the same heifer who was doing that? She's hoping that nobody will notice. And of course, you got useful idiots like Sean P. Diddy Combs who are giving her a platform. I mean, just a gaggle of black bootlicks that they got together. Talk about the Legion of Doom. But this is supposed to be her platform. And that's the hope, is that if she gets up there in front of some black folks, there'll be some Negroes who will say, oh, we finally have that black-brown coalition. Yes, there's that pink elephant you've been looking for the longest time. There's that unicorn that you've never actually seen. You've never actually had even a report of it. But there's myths and rumors that perhaps such a creature existed long ago and far away. So her showing up in front of some Negroes, she knows that there's this pack of idiots in the black community who are so desirous, so thirsty for a black-brown alliance. Actually, what they're thirsty for is some interracial sexual access. And that being the case, she's hoping that this will give her cover for what her real agenda is, which is to see how many of these dumb Negroes can she get to back her. She's going, well, you were smart enough not to go in with either Bloomberg and his black surrogates who were propping him up, and you were smart enough not to let Public Enema or to let any of these other burned out hip hoppers get you on board with Bernie Sanders. Well, I'm wondering if you'll be too smart for me. I've kind of kept a low profile, and I wonder if you've forgotten about how I've been trying to undermine your tangibles and trying to figure out how to take your tangibles and turn them into something for me. She's trying to figure out, have we forgotten? And we're going to send the message loud and clear. No, we have not forgotten. So whatever Alexandria Cortez's plan is, whether it's trying to keep her own dreams of remaining a member of Congress alive, which she may will, or if she's trying to climb the political ladder, which clearly seems to be what this is actually about, she probably is looking at Tulsi Gabbard and going, well, if Tulsi Gabbard can get some support, if she can get on the stage, I know I can do better. I'm from New York. I've been on television more. I'm from New York. That's what she's thinking right now. And so she's trying to figure out if there's some dumb black people she can get to back her up. You got P. Diddy and you got Van Jones and some other losers, fakers, frauds, phonies, and fools. These guys are being used as proxies for the black community. You're going to put these black faces out there and they're going to lap up every lying word that bucktooth Alexandria Cortez has to say with that horse-faced grin of hers. And apparently, this is supposed to be the black community getting on board with her. Yeah, the same way that Bloomberg tried that with those black mayors down in Houston when he had his little get-together, when he had his little chumpapalooza there. He figured the same trick would work. How'd that work out for him? But you see how quickly the coronavirus narrative shifted, though, don't you? Problem is, all of this is happening so quickly that the white supremacists and their non-white collaborators have been forced to show their racist duplicity outright. It's all the ground shifting under their feet too quickly as they try to figure out what's going to be the right line to use for the long term. It's just going too fast. It's all happening too quickly. They're having to shift from one talking point to the next too quickly. They're trying to maintain the anti-black unequal status quo, but at the same time, they're trying to come to us and say, we sure do think you Negroes need some support and you need some help, but why, you've got a friend in us. And meanwhile, black folks are pointing and going, hey, how come everybody's getting tangibles except for us? Well, we can talk about that later. Whoa, you didn't tell them other groups we can talk about it later. You didn't tell these other groups that that's just not feasible, or they got to wait, or there's got to be a study. You're going to do for us what you've been doing for everybody else if you want our support. Well, let's talk about the disproportionate number of black people dying for coronavirus. We want to give you sympathy. Sympathy, hell, give us the bag. That's what we're saying. And you notice that not one of those black bootlicks who Alexandria Ocasio-Horseface was holding court with on P. Diddy's little live stream. Notice how not one of them was talking about dropping off the bag or talking about how, hey, Asians got caked off simply because they said we're concerned that there might be a drop off in foot traffic at our stores. They didn't even wait until anyone was out of business or even taking a hit to their profits. They looked and said, well, the way things are going, there is the potential that we might lose a couple of dollars this week. So we need $1 billion bailout. Not even one of them had closed their doors. Not even one of them was in financial trouble. They didn't even wait for that. And the white powers that be didn't say, we need a study first. Let's find out if you guys actually need the money. Ain't that what Donald Trump was saying about respirators? You got a lot of states. They're asking for respirators, and they're asking for assets from the national reserves. And we're not even sure that they're even in any sort of trouble yet, whether or not they even need them. Nobody went to the Asians and said, hold on, before we cut this check, we need to find out we need a study, whether or not you guys even need this. Don't worry, it'll take about 10 or 12 years. They didn't do that with them. Didn't tell them to wait. Didn't tell them, well, we ain't got a bag for you, but we got some sympathy. Then they come to black people and it's a matter of, well, we're not discussing any sort of money. No, they're not discussing it, but we are. And any Negroes claiming to talk about black folks and COVID-19 mortality rates and they're not talking about money, that lets you know you're dealing with a mouthpiece for white supremacy. You see, the Asians said loud and clear that it's racist to make them synonymous with the coronavirus. Why, you even got Bill the Bigot Maher putting his foot in his mouth again, although in this case being somewhat accurate, talking about how you can't be hypersensitive about saying the China virus because the COVID-19 virus did come from China. Just like SARS and bird flu and another number of other viruses came out of China, out of those wet markets in China. And merely for making that pig simple, obvious observation, which, by the way, happens to be a fact, you already got people saying, Bill Maher should be off the air again. People's hair is on fire. And then you have the white government being led by an LGBT Surgeon General, working with the white media hand in hand to make black people synonymous with the coronavirus. And nobody's saying boo about it. But whereas the Asians use so-called anti-Asian xenophobia, which doesn't even exist, to demand federal funds, even though not one Asian business has closed due to this alleged xenophobia, black people point this fact out. By the white media and government's own admission, we are dying from this virus disproportionately, and no one in the government or the white media is talking about federal funds for us. Nobody's talking about how, this disproportionate number of black people dying from COVID-19, this is the result of economics. So if anyone needs federal funds, the black community does. For all the phony claims that Asian businesses are empty because people are singling them out to not patronize them, notice that not one of them has had to close up shop due to a lack of customers. It's a hoax. I posted on my Twitter feed that you had one restaurant in particular in D.C., Queen's English, bragging about how they had a packed house. Oh, how great the people have been. They're supporting us. So it's all a hoax. It's all a joke. It's all a lie. But the black mortality rate, we can confirm that through dead bodies. See, nobody's making up that black people are dying from COVID-19. Nobody's exaggerating that one. But you see, these other groups, they're hypersensitive to anything that could even remotely threaten their interests. Like Richard Spencer, we see these Asian American politicians, they're not looking just at their current circumstances. They're looking at the horizon for anything that could even potentially be a problem down the road. And what they've been doing is employing dog whistle language, which white supremacy has heard loud and clear. Like all systems of oppression, white supremacy, or rather anti-black oppression, relies on the use of buffer groups to help the oppressor class maintain its control over the designated underclass. And all these false claims of anti-Asian xenophobia, that's nothing more than phony baloney dog whistle language, which is meant to send a message to the dominant society. Hey, you guys better make sure that we don't lose our position. We're the buffer class. Reinforce our position. Make sure our position remains stable, because you need us to help keep the Negroes in check. You need us to stand between the Negroes and you. You need us so you can point to us and say, why, here's our non-white group who's doing well, because we floated them all of these loans and all this government support. And we've also made sure that they're not going to be treated the same as the Negroes. And well, if this group, if this designated middle class, this designated buffer class, if they're not in the same position as the Negroes over here, well, that proves that there is no racism, because after all, they're not white. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. The beneficiaries and the operatives of white supremacy have taken on the mindset of the white supremacists, and they live in mortal fear of any little increase in our status or anything that might constitute a decrease in theirs. As far as they're concerned, one's the same as the other. You can have all of these Asian American businesses doing fine, but if you see a black business that's even started, forget about franchise, a black business that starts, well, where's code enforcement at? Somebody needs to be talking to the zoning commission. The city council needs to pass some new ordinances. Somebody needs to call the police. Something needs to be done. See, these other groups who have identified with white supremacy, they're just as afraid that it could happen, and the government hands them money because it understands that the position that these other groups play in white supremacy, the function that they serve. Black people point out that we're dying, not that we're afraid we're going to die. We can point to the bodies. And even the white media says, hey, here's a pile of black bodies over here from COVID-19. And the powers that be won't even broach the subject of a financial bailout for us. When we say, hey, you're going to have to drop off that bag, this is one of those problems that you throw money at because money will solve it. And they're going, oh, we're not even discussing that. That is off the table. We're not even going to discuss it. They're terrified. And that's how you know that's the issue. That is the issue. You want to kill white supremacy dead? The silver bullet is black economics. Why is all this coming to a head now? Normally, the white supremacists and their allies, they have time on their hands. They have the luxury of time. They usually do some off-the-wall, underhanded nonsense, or they hand each other some money, and then they have the luxury of some time passing between when they give each other some sort of payoff and then when we make a demand for the same. They usually have the luxury of time because black people are not on their butts about it. And they've also had their black bootlicks, some preachers like Messy Jesse standing next to Bernie Sanders, or Al Sharpton giving his endorsement, such as it is, to Alexandria Cortez. Let me give you a platform. I'm going to get some black folks together, and I'm going to help you say Black-Brown Alliance. While she's sitting here thinking, as soon as I'm through getting you dumb Negroes to support me, it's going to be you Negroes. If you're not all gone, you're definitely going to be back in chains, and my group's going to be okay. Yeah, you got a couple of useful idiots helping out the operatives of white supremacy. But in this case, the black media is alerting you to when this stuff happens. We're pointing out the con artists. We're pointing out the con game that's going on right in front of us and telling you exactly what needs to be said. We're keeping that front of mind. The white media does not decide what the black agenda is. The black media does. So now we see why the white media trots out a P. Diddy and a whole gaggle of black bootlicks to pretend like they're going to talk about black deaths from the coronavirus. And who do they have in tow? Alexandria, that doesn't make me black, Cortez. Well, I guess Puff Daddy likes playing the fool for Hispanic women who turn up their noses at the black community. I guess that's just a guilty pleasure for him. White power sees what it is that we're doing, and they try to use the Negroes who the white media made into celebrities. And the hope is that their celebrity Negroes will get them enough attention from the black community that no one will pay attention to what we're saying. That's what they're hoping goes on here. Oh, we're going to have some phony baloney pretend black summit. And who put this together? Puff Daddy did. And we've also got Mary J. Blige, and we've got Van Jones, and we've got a bunch of Negroes who depend on white media, white supremacy, white power for every crumb of their daily bread. Negroes who are daily begging white power to sign their paycheck for them. These are Negroes who are at the table of white supremacy getting crumbs from massa. And this is supposed to be who speaks for us? Not even. But what they're hoping is that a certain number of black people will see this, and hopefully they can muddy the waters. White power sees what it is we're doing, and they try to use the Negroes who the white media made into celebrities. These black celebrities are creations of the white media. And the hope is that their celebrity is going to distract enough black people from paying attention to what we're saying. White supremacy understands the importance, the crucial importance of tipping points. See, they understand how to recognize when they're at a tipping point, when things could go either way, and they're used to a situation where they have just complete carte blanche to put their thumb on the scales and get the predetermined result that they want. So here we go with a bunch of celebrity Negroes. You can always tell when white power is trying to put on a show like they did with that reparations fraud on Capitol Hill last year. Let's get some black celebrities out there, and surely all the Negroes will look, because black people are just horrifyingly aspirational. Black people are absurdly, nihilistically aspirational. They're suicidally aspirational. They will gladly live vicariously through some black rapper or some black athlete or some black celebrity or singer. They'll settle for that. They don't want material resources for themselves. They'll just put up with watching Ballers, or they'll put up with watching some black celebrity in their mansion, which will get repossessed by the IRS, or they'll get taken to court and be deprived of it. But in the meanwhile, black people are trying to live through somebody else. Only the EBT world star hip hop crowd listens to Puff Daddy. And I don't know of any black people worth a damn who listen to Van Jones or any of the rest of these cable TV coons. Only the know-nothing Negroes who aren't going anywhere and are useless to anyone fall for this trick. At this late date, if you're still falling for this old ploy, you are certified stupid. And by the way, these fools who actually are dumb enough to go, oh, I want to hear what Puff Daddy has to say. The ones who are clearly low-key looking for interracial sexual access, they will also be useless on election day because these morons can't even be motivated to get up off the couch. Now, if the white media and the white supremacist masters that it serves thinks that it's able to divert a certain number of gullible Negroes with these high-profile distraction campaigns, they're right. There is a large number of black folks who this is going to get the attention of, and they're going to be pacified by this, and they're going to see this and otherwise be made to sit on their hands. They are not going to be joining black empowerment because they're too busy doing the same old hamster on a treadmill routine that they've always done. Sure, there's always going to be that rump contingent of gullible, weak-willed, weak-minded Negroes who go for the okie doke. But if white supremacy thinks that it's going to slice off any of the hardcore B1 types, that it's going to blunt any of our momentum or our drive, they are sorely mistaken. We do not take our marching orders or our instructions from any of these white media inventions like a Puff Daddy or a Van Jones. We are not attempting to do what they say, and we're also not looking to see if they're going to signal boost what we say. That's the reason why when Snoop Dogg for a hot minute actually told the truth about Gail Skank, that was the reason why I told you, hey, do not forget where Snoop Dogg gets his money from. And please don't think that if the white managers and his white handlers and his white PR people and the white corporations that he's trying to get a paycheck from, if these guys tell him, well, Snoop, some of this stuff you've said has been problematic, buddy. Don't think that he won't do an about face right quick, and that's exactly what happened. There's nothing wrong with a Snoop Dogg or a 50 Cent repeating what the black media says, but there is something wrong with us resting on that. We cannot be held hostage to the flip-flopping and the topsy-turvy behavior of any of these black folks who white supremacy has been signing the paychecks of. Because we know how this story is going to end. And that's the reason why when they come around, it's you're going to have to establish a track record with me first before I even entertain the idea of entertaining the idea of palling around with you or repeating what you say or going, hey, here's somebody over here who seems solid. Nah, I've seen this movie too many times and I damn sure don't like the way that it ends. So yeah, these black celebrities, they're just going to have to hang 10 on their own. That's just the way it works. But you do see the con game that's at work. White power, a lot of people are trying to lay a groundwork for what they hope is going to be the post-COVID-19 order. Alexandria Cortez is attempting to become a real power broker in Washington. She's attempting to try to solidify her position within the white political machine. And she's trying to see if there's any gullible, dumb Negroes who she can get as her base. She's not sitting here palling around for a hot second with Al Sharpton or with P. Diddy by accident. These are men who have made it very clear that they're chasing interracial sexual access. She shows her tools very well. Hell, these guys have been advertising that they're willing tools for whomever. Wiggle them drawers in front of their faces and they'll be panting like the dogs they are. But the thing about it is, Al Sharpton may be in New York, or at least he works there. P. Diddy, somewhat less. So I don't know. Is she preparing for a Senate run? Perhaps she thinks that she's going to be mayor of New York, whatever delusion that she has. Black people better understand this woman has not said one syllable in our interest. She has not stuck up for us or said anything. She's coming around because there's something that she wants. She's slithering around just like the freaking Republicans do, just like these do-nothing Democrats do. She comes slithering in the door because there's something she wants. She didn't give a damn about black people when she was running for office. Didn't even mention black people on the night that she won office. Didn't say anything about black people after she won office, but she did make sure to say, just because I have African ancestry, that doesn't make me black. She did make sure to say that, though. Now, she wasn't going to stick up for black people, but she did make sure to distance herself from black people. She wanted to make it unequivocally clear, I'm not one of them. And she thinks she's going to reinvent herself or rewrite her history now? Don't dream. And speaking of people who are attempting to reinvent themselves, I would point out that since you have these Asian American politicians and groups who are so concerned about anti-Asian racism in the United States, so concerned about alleged xenophobia, why is it that not even one Asian is objecting to how Africans in China are being blatantly discriminated against and brutalized and evicted from where they've been living? They've been forced out into the streets en masse. Assaulted, arrested in broad daylight. And you notice how you don't have your white media, not even your so-called black bootlicks in the white media. They're not connecting the dots and pointing out that, gee, it seems like everywhere you look in America, especially in the Deep South, you got states saying that we don't want any black people coming here, and we're going to racially profile for black people coming to these states. And look at what's going on in China. Man, there's a hyper-aggressive anti-black racist program at work, and it ain't just in the United States. I was the one who, in my classic video, Racist Asians Hating Blacks, I pointed out how there has been a long-standing policy of anti-black racism in China. You can go back to the Beijing Olympics with that. They didn't need COVID-19 to justify that one. See, that's how these guys operate. They just invent some phony baloney pretext. Why, the Olympics are coming, so we got to do something about you niggers. They didn't need COVID-19 for the Beijing Games to justify going after black people. They just did and said, well, you know, these black people, it's unsightly to have these black street vendors running around, to have these Nigerians and these Africans running around. It's just unsightly to have them here as street vendors and such. That's just unsightly. Is it more unsightly than the Asian ones? Well, the Asian ones are citizens here, and well, you see, their ramshackle stands and their blankets that they put on the ground with their made in Taiwan goods that fell off a truck somewhere, that's more presentable than these Africans with their ugly little stalls and kiosks and tents, you see. So they've been going after black folks in China long before the coronavirus. They didn't need to wait for the coronavirus to give them a reason. They don't need a reason. They just need an opportunity. And if an opportunity doesn't exist, that's okay. They'll do what they've always done. They'll just make one up. The current pretext being used by the Chinese government is that 300,000 Africans in Guangzhou are setting off a second wave of the pandemic. First of all, you ain't tested that many. Second of all, if the black folks weren't the ones who kicked off the first wave, then it's a damn lie to blame them for a second one. If they were not the reason that your first wave was spreading so quickly, then it's asinine to say, yeah, but they're responsible for the second one. Black folks ain't the main ones who are patronizing those wet markets. People are not the main ones who work there. They're not the main ones who handle the animals in those places. So how the hell is it that black people are the ones setting off a second wave of anything? The Chinese government is blaming the Africans for the coronavirus now. They're not blaming the Chinese. They're not blaming the wet markets. So you see, the same playbook the white supremacists use in the U.S. is also being used by the Asians in China. And no one is objecting. Where are the Asian American politicians now? Where's Grace Ming at now? Hey, where's Ayanna Pressley talking about we can't be discriminating against Asian American businesses? Yeah, but we can discriminate against African Americans, though. That we can do, right, Ayanna? So when she talks about her squad, what she's doing is she's auditioning for a job to be the pet Negro for Alexandria Cortez and whatever other elements she thinks are going to kick her off. That's what Ayanna Pressley's doing. And the African governments, their response to this has all been pretty weak sauce. You don't see anyone who's saying, hey, if you're going to be mass deporting Africans, don't be surprised when you see these these Chinese nationals getting mass deported. They're not doing that. And they're not saying, hey, these Chinese coming in here, they're the ones who brought the coronavirus to Africa. If anybody needs to be deported, it's them. You don't see the Africans doing that. And you don't see any African governments cutting China off from the natural resources that the Chinese use to make their crappy products. The Africans could put China on its knees in a single day if they cut them off. That's all it would take. Wouldn't need one warship, wouldn't need one military strike, wouldn't need anything. Just tell the Chinese, that's it, you're done. Get your hands off those bulldozers and such, you're done. The port's closed. Nothing comes in or out. Chinese, you're done. You do that, you could put China on its knees before the end of business today. And by refusing to punish China, These African so-called leaders, they are emboldening the anti-black racism that the Chinese are practicing. The Chinese are looking to see what's the response going to be from the Africans. Will it be a reaction of strength in the face of this anti-black aggression, or are they going to show weakness and cowardice? Well, as usual, the African misleaders are showing the same sniveling cowardice that they've always shown. And they're looking at the blacks of the grassroots. Are the blacks of the grassroots going to be agitating for any changes, making it clear that either there's going to be a get tough with China policy, or there's going to be some leaders who get kicked out and some new leaders who will implement such a policy change? They're not seeing any changes, not at the grassroots and not at the top. The Chinese do the same things that the white supremacists do. They invent some lie about black people, and then they use the lie that they created as a pretext, a justification to single us out for the next anti-black assault. Because when you got Greg Abbott and you got Ron DeSantis talking about Louisiana and New Orleanians, when they're talking about that, that's code for black people. Because you damn sure ain't seeing Ron DeSantis actually stopping anyone from New York from coming into Florida. A lot of people from New York actually have residences in Florida, and the people coming from New York, by and large, are white. Those long-distance tourists and those long-distance people who come into Florida, they're white by and large. They're not black. So what's this really about? A, it's about making sure that black people do not come into Florida, and B, it's also about justifying what the next stage is going to be. And it's going to be, well, we know it's these black people who are the main ones who have coronavirus, so we're going to start getting tough with these black folks in Miami. All those black people in southern Florida, it's time to round them up, and we're going to start curtailing where they can go. They're going to be starting off by claiming that, this is just a policy for Negroes coming in to Florida from the outside, from these other states. It's going to start off with New Orleans, then it's going to be Louisiana, then it's going to be from any point in the United States. If you're black trying to get into Florida, you're getting racially profiled. And you better have a justification. And there will be one standard for the white people, which is, you can go pass right through. The black folks, well, even if you're not from Louisiana, we still need to know where you're going. Nigger, you better check in with us. You can consider yourself on parole. You're basically a Negro on parole while you're in our state. So you better make sure you check in with us and we have tabs on where the hell you are. You consider yourself on lockdown. And you better not move around too much. In fact, you better not move around at all. That's what's going on in Florida and going on in Texas and a few other places. They are using Louisiana or New Orleans as a proxy for black people in general, because this is their MO. This is how they've always tried to promote the next anti-black assault. Willie Horton, he's a proxy for black people. Welfare queens, proxy for black women, black people in general. Super predators, proxy for black people. And the Chinese government is no different. You realize that the so-called wet markets, where the COVID virus and SARS and bird flu all originated, it started in those Chinese wet markets, where they got all those animals in cages defecating and urinating on each other and passing viruses from one species to the next and then on to humans. These wet markets in China, they are super virus factories. These places are factories that produce super viruses, and the Chinese have reopened them. Did you know that? They've reopened those wet markets. For God's sake, they haven't even eradicated coronavirus. Hell, they've barely gotten the numbers down. They're sitting here rounding up every black person they can find with the lie that, there's a second wave of coronavirus that has begun. Well, actually, they may be telling the truth about that. Perhaps the Chinese, just as they tried to cover up the original outbreak of COVID-19 by claiming there was nothing wrong here, and they went after that Dr. Li Wulong or whatever his name was, who first sounded the alarm. They tried to pretend as if there was no virus until they were forced to have to admit to it. The Chinese knew about it long before they were willing to admit that it existed or how bad the problem was. Perhaps they already have lost control of the situation. They're trying to put a pretty face on it, and they don't want anyone to know. Whoops. Looks like we called a ceasefire too soon. Looks like this thing's back off its leash again. We thought that we could cover this one up, but looks like we can't. Okay, maybe the situation's not as good as we were claiming it was. obviously the Chinese government's brilliant plan to keep a lid on how bad the situation really is by having some pretend fake reopening of their economy, well, that's already failing, and they're trying to invent a scapegoat. The Africans. See, they need a scapegoat, but it's got to be one that isn't Chinese. They got to have a scapegoat, and they can't say white because they're trying to appease the white supremacist powers. So you're not going to say all these European tourists and such, or all these European residents. They're not going to sit there and go after them. Instead, they're going to say, well, it's the Africans, these black people you see. The same playbook that Ron DeSantis is using in Florida. After over a month of allowing mostly white tourists and Floridian residents to spread the virus on Florida's beaches, and then going to Disney World and having jam-packed fireworks displays in the middle of a viral outbreak, you tell tens of thousands of people to come to the Magic Kingdom so you can spread joy and love and coronavirus to each other. And then all of these tourists, they get on those planes and head back to their home states all over the country. Florida has been acting as a mass vector for COVID-19 for months now. Florida's coronavirus numbers are exploding because of this, but who is Governor Racist Ron blaming? Black tourists from Louisiana. But who is it that he's actually trying to racially profile? Just black people in general. Any black folks from anywhere who come to Florida, they're getting racially profiled. Well, we see that your license plate says Tennessee. We see that it says California, but you haven't been through Louisiana, have you? You haven't stopped in Louisiana, did you? Yeah, you sure about that? Because we know you niggers lie. That's Ron the racist DeSantis scapegoat. He's been setting that one up from the jump. Anti-black racism is the motivation that unites both the white supremacist and his Asiatic counterpart. So you see, the playbook here is not an anti-anything but white policy. No matter what certain politicians, no matter what the Grace Mings and the rest of her ilk try to say, no matter what they say, this is not about, well, the problem is you're not white. No, this policy is not being enforced against non-whites. It's being enforced specifically against black people. It's the same policy that it's always been, an anti-black policy. Because you got the mayor of New York and the governor who are pointing out that, well, there's a large number of Hispanics who have died actually in New York from the coronavirus. And yet you're not seeing them trying to make Hispanics into the face of it. And you already have people like Ayanna Jones and others who are saying we need to have a bailout specifically for illegal immigrants. Oh, I'm sorry. I mean undocumented immigrants. A bailout for them, that means Hispanic, because that's who it's going to. It's damn sure not going to any illegal Haitians who are in the country without papers. It's not going to any illegal Jamaicans in the country without papers. Nah, that's not who it's going to. It's going to be going to people who are mostly from south of the border. Yet another use of a pretext. We got to have a justification for having a policy specifically for giving money to these Hispanics, and we got to make it where it's something we can justify. Now, well, the pretext is it's not for Hispanics, it's for undocumented immigrants who are just going to happen to be all Hispanic. That's all. You see these other groups, all of them operating from the same policy of making black people the face of the virus, and then using that as justification for singling us out and attacking us. It doesn't matter if their numbers are true or not. It doesn't matter if they're right or not. This is just a matter of we said it, that makes it true, and by the time you disprove it, well, we will have already been able to successfully carry out the next assault against you niggers. You guys are the enemy who everyone can agree on needs to be ganged up on. Well, so much for all those phony baloney protests where you had those Asian American groups holding up signs saying my ethnicity is not a virus or reject fear and racism. Apparently they can't be bothered to tell their relatives back in China, hey guys, ethnicity is not a virus and you need to reject fear and racism. Well, what they really mean is you don't need to be doing anything against us regardless of where the virus originated at. And we expect that whatever goodies, giveaways, and guarantees the white supremacy has given to the model minority, those are not supposed to be diminished even one iota, no matter what. We have certain expectations. White supremacy has made certain guarantees to its non-white operatives and allies that if you help to uphold the system of white supremacy, or rather the system of anti-black oppression, then there's going to be a place for you, a guaranteed place on the ladder and hierarchy of white supremacy. Sure, it won't be as high as the white supremacists, but there will be a glass floor in place to make sure that you're never at the bottom with the lowly Negroes. And if anything looks like it's going to undermine the position of the model minority, well, white supremacy will float these guys a couple of grants and some no-interest loans and some other forms of money that will not have to be paid back, basically giveaways. And that will guarantee their position, and so the racial pyramid never undergoes any changes. This is what's really going on here. So you better be real careful when you see some of these Negroes like Puff Daddy and Van Jones and others who have decided that they're going to try to raise the profile of and give a platform to the Alexandria Ocasio horse faces out there. When these people are showing up, what they're trying to do is they're trying to dial you in for another 20 years of stupidity and being back on the treadmill. Meanwhile, they're not saying a damn thing about black people being singled out and systematically brutalized both in the United States and in China. They're not saying a damn word about that. Nobody's pointing out that the single most important thing that black people are supposed to have right now happens to be federal funds. I ain't talking about no loans neither. You did not hand these loans to these illegal aliens. You didn't hand loans to the Asians. You handed them a check. Cut the freaking check. Black people are systematically discriminated against and harmed and dying as a result. We require compensation. That compensation is reparations. That reparations doesn't take many forms. Reparations takes one form and one form only. You drop off the bag. White supremacy is testing us right now to find out how serious we are. Did we mean it when we said it? They're trotting in their bootlicks and their puppets like Alexandria Horseface. They're trying to find out, hey, that black-brown alliance delusion, hey, is there any more mileage that line still has with you Negroes? Do we have any coin in your bank? Is there any sort of credibility that old delusion has? Why, we even got some rappers out here to say it. So that means you Negroes, you always take your talking points and your marching orders from black celebrities. You've always done that. So you're going to do it this time too, right? Right? Well, we're not sure if there's going to be a check for you Negroes, and we know that you guys will go away because all we have to do is tell Negroes, nope, we're not doing anything for you, like Bernie Sanders did. Not feasible, just not feasible. And you guys will just say, okay, well, I guess we're defeated, and we'll go along with white supremacy, and please, just some crumbs, anything at all, please. You guys will do that, right? Because you always have, right? All we got to do is tell you niggers no, and that's the end of it, right? That's what they're doing right now. They're testing our resolve. A lot of you fools have already fallen for it, and already the ones who were not built for black empowerment, you've already done oh man, they ain't cut the check last week. They ain't cut us the checks. I mean, it ain't never gonna happen, man. This is wrong, man. We just need to just settle for whatever we can get. These white supremacist sock puppet accounts and these Negroes who are clearly trying to figure out how to get a job from white supremacy by making themselves as useful to the left arm of white supremacy as possible. These guys stand out like a sore thumb. Or rather, I should say they stand out like a thumb with gangrene. And the same way that a gangrenous thumb, a rotted digit, will not be allowed to remain part of the body, so the bootlicks, the turncoats, these backstabbers, these undercover operatives for white supremacy, they cannot be allowed to remain part of the body politic of black empowerment. They're not going to. We understand the methods and the MO of white supremacy. We understand that the system of anti-black oppression is aggressive, but we are more determined. We are going to dig in our heels and make our stand here, and no one is going to move us. Not Puff Daddy. Not Al Sharpton. Not any of the other fakers, frauds, fools, phonies, pulpit pimps, and political prostitutes. None of them is going to move us. That's not to say that we're not going somewhere. We're going straight toward black empowerment. We understand that right now we are paying our dues. This is the price that power demands. The first thing that you have to show, as I've been teaching you for over a decade now, if you want to be liked, and there's clearly a lot of Negroes, codependents, who want to be liked, and they're going to say yes to anything. White supremacy says, you need to vote for us and you're not going to get a damn thing out of it. So you're going to vote for us, right? Yes. That's what the weak-willed, weak-minded Negro does. He wants to be liked by white supremacy. But the black man and the black woman who has their heads on straight, the black people who are actually serious about their power and know what is required in order to acquire it, they don't say yes to anything. They understand that this is about first and foremost setting a tone, and the tone is you're going to respect us. You ain't got to like me, but you're damn sure going to respect me. And if you want to be respected, you better learn to start saying no. All of these Africans trying to figure out, how do we get the Chinese to like us? The Chinese can't do a damn thing for you that you're not capable of doing for yourself. Oh, we need the Chinese to build us some roads. All they're doing is building roads straight from your mineral deposits straight to the ports. You think the Chinese are going to develop Africa? Yeah, the same way the Chinese developed Tibet. They built a couple of nice places for the Chinese expatriates who were living there as basically a Chinese overclass, same way that they did in the Philippines and did in Indonesia. They built a couple of nice places for their would-be Chinese outposts in these countries, and then from there they ain't building a damn thing else. You would think that the African had learned. Idi Amin, the reason that they demonize Idi Amin is because Idi Amin was not, he was determined. No, there's not going to be any Indian overlords here. If you're going to be in Uganda, you're going to be under Ugandan power. That means black power, because I cannot go to India and have India under black power. India does not bow to black power. India does not serve black power. I cannot go to India and think I'm going to run or rule things. So how the hell would it look if we're letting every non-black person into Africa and they get to run things and we're just going, okay. No, that day is done. That day is dead and buried. Black empowerment is the order of the day. And the black folks who are actually built for this, they are on their grind, they are on their square, and they're on the move. We understand that what's happening right now is a dress rehearsal. It is a dress rehearsal for the fall of white supremacy, or it is a dress rehearsal for the final solution to the Negro question. And which one of these outcomes is ultimately going to be the final result? That will depend on one thing and one thing alone: what we do.